Okay, we're here and assembling our 39th Anet printer for the print farm here. So this is number 39. It's an ET4. I know I've recorded videos before showing the assembly of these. I'm not going to show the whole assembly. I've already got it partially put together. It only takes about 10 or 15 minutes. But what I wanted to show you are some of the things that I do and check on these printers when I assemble them, as well as when I go through and do preventative maintenance on them. I'm going to show you that what I'm doing, even though these are Anet printers, I've got Creality Ender 3 printer here, one that I've had for quite a while, and several other printers that I'll show you now. Even this Keytech, it's a dual filament printer, single head, and it has the same roller configuration on both the X, Y, and Z axis as the other printers have. The Keytech A10M. Here's our 10 log hands 2 dual extruder, dual head printer. If you notice, has the same vertical mounts, has the same belt system. The vertical Z axis has the same roller configuration as our other printers. Our Y axis has the same rollers, a little different track system. Most all of the characteristics of this printer are going to be the same as what we're going to be covering here. Okay, this time the Anycubic Mega Zero. This Mega Zero on the Z axis has the similar tracks with the rollers and the worm drive. Horizontally, it has the same carriage with the rollers. Now, on the bed, a little bit different. It's using the rails with the bearings. A lot of the things and characteristics are the same, and that's what we're trying to show you here today. Okay, this printer is the Exfico, and it again has the same metal frame, the same rollers for the vertical or Z axis, the rollers here. Same thing with the rollers for the carriage, and the base also has rollers, the belt, and the same tracking system. Okay, here's another printer, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of it, but X Ving Zung Zang Zing. Anyway, it has the same dual roller tracks for the bed, and then the same tri-rollers for the Z axis, and the X axis has the same tri-rollers for the X axis. This is a folding printer. I did a video on it a while back. Okay, as you can see, there are many printers out there that are similar to the Ender, Creality Ender, and the Anet ET4 series. that have these type of metal frames, and most of them have a very similar or identical carriage system. Okay, as you can see, the A-nets all have these 3 rollers on this assembly here, which operates the Z-axis, and over here they have 2 rollers, and I'm showing you the assembly of this. And right now, if you notice, this roller right here is very loose. It shouldn't be that loose. So that's one of the things that I'll be showing you how to make these adjustments initially when you're assembling the printer, as well as going through the use and operating the printers. Now we're going to turn this Creality around, and if you look at the ender here, it also has the same 3 rollers on this side, and on the other side it has the same 3 rollers over there. The X-axis, as you can see, has 3 rollers, and when you're looking at the Y-axis, there are 4 rollers underneath here, 2 on each side. Same thing on the A-net. So as you can see, these printers, the Creality Ender 3 and the A-nets and some of the other printers that I showed you, are all very similar in design and operation. So that means that maintenance of them is going to be very similar, if not identical. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I've picked up and learned to look for and adjustments to make, and in that process maybe you can apply it to your printer, whether you have an A-net, a Creality Ender 3, or any of the other printers I showed you, or a number of printers out there on the market today. It applies to almost all of them. So let's go ahead and get started on some of this stuff, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, this is the carriage system for the A-net, which is, like I said, similar to Ender and a lot of others out there. It has 3 rollers. Now if you notice, 2 of these rollers are stationary, have no adjustment to them, but this third one has a nut here that actually adjusts that roller by moving it in and out to tighten or loosen the way it fits and operates and rolls on this track right here. So let's go ahead, and I never know how these things are coming from the factory until I put them on. And right now this one feels pretty good, so I probably won't have to adjust these, but yeah, I will. They're a little bit loose. You do 2 things. You want to make sure there's no wobble in this and that it moves freely, but at the same time you don't want these rollers to turn too easily. So what you do, you take the wrench that comes with it and you put it on the nut on this bottom roller here, and you turn it slightly. I'm turning it clockwise if you're looking at it from the back, and you'll find it tightens up. Now when I go to turn these rollers, I can just barely turn them. I can turn them a little bit, but just barely. There's a lot of friction. Now, you don't want to get it too tight. If you get this nut too tight, you get these too tight on here, it will cause, when the printer's not in use and sitting, it will cause an indentation in this rubber, and then as it goes back and forth rather than smooth, you'll feel bumps in it. So you don't want to get it so tight that it's going to do that. Same thing on the ones going up the side. This one, I can barely turn these rollers here, which is about the way I want it. And then over on this side, I mentioned earlier that one was very loose. The bottom one's pretty loose. So I'm going to adjust the roller on the inside here. And that little adjustment added friction to that top roller and the bottom. So all of the rollers now have some friction to them. So you want to take this little wrench that comes with these printers and check all of these rollers and make an adjustment on them. And I always recommend that when you hold the thing stationary, that you're able to turn these rollers, but with effort. They should have quite a bit of friction on them. If you can't turn them at all, then you're probably too tight and you're going to run the risk of damaging the rubber on here or putting an indentation in it and having that bump that I was talking about. Okay, you want to check and make sure that your spring tension and everything's good on this extruder motor. Also, make sure that these connectors are snug and tight. Okay, you want to make sure that these little Allen screws are tight on your coupler here. Okay, then I always want to take a little bit of my white grease and put a little bit on above and a little bit below. Then just roll it down and the same thing, go up with it. Okay, that grease really helps extend the life. This belt is always important. I'm going to go ahead and put the belt on. Okay, I've got the belt on, but it's not adjusted or in the pulley on the end there. What you have to do now is actually loosen the set screws on this X-axis drive motor here until it slides in. Now you can get the belt over the end pulley there. Okay, now a couple things you want to look at this point. You need to adjust this by pulling back on this motor and then tightening these screws. You don't want to use a tool or something to pry it. You just want to use your finger, and if you use your finger and pull it tight, I found that that's just about the right amount of tension to put on that belt, because you want this belt tight, but you don't want it super tight. If you get it too tight, it's going to put extra stress on the motor and the bearings in the motor as well as this pulley, and it's going to cause the belt to stretch sooner. It's going to put more resistance on the travel, so you don't want it too tight or too loose. Okay, once you've got it the right tightness, tighten these all down. Make sure they're good and tight. Okay, now make sure after you've tightened this back down that this moves freely. Now the next thing you want to do is look at the belt itself. Is the belt centered in this track? And in this case it looks like it is. If it's not, then you may need to loosen this with your Allen wrench and move it in or out to make sure that you're lining up and centered on that track. Otherwise you're going to rub along the edge here and wear out the edge of your belt. Same thing with the other end. You want to come around here and make sure that this one is centered up. You also want to go underneath and look at it, because when you put this belt on, you can adjust or you can center up the belt. There's a slot that the end of the belt goes in, and it can move back and forth, so you want to kind of position it in the center, and you want to do that from both sides. There again, you're just trying to prevent any friction or any wear and tear on that belt. Okay, now we're satisfied with the tension on the belt. These rollers are lined here on the end, and it's centered, and it feels pretty smooth, so that's good. And we've also checked and made adjustments to the rollers for that carriage. Now the next thing to do is come down here and look at your bed. Now almost every one of these, when I put them together, the bed has some wobble in it. If you look up underneath here, there are two rollers on each side, and the rollers on the side where the drive belt is are stationary, but on the other side, which is the left side here, both of those rollers are adjustable. Now I can reach under there and feel them with my hand, and remember, we wanted to have some tension on it, but we don't want them real loose. The back one, I can turn it just a little bit, but the front one's real loose. So the front one, I'm going to have to take the wrench and put the wrench on that nut, and I turned it clockwise a little bit. Okay, so you adjust those two rollers until you've got all the play out of this, and you've got them set to where they have that you can barely turn them. But they have good friction. Again, you don't want them too tight, or you'll put an indentation in the rollers when this thing sits in one position too long. Now the belt. Let's take a look. The belt feels pretty good. But if you need to adjust the belt, again, you have 4 set screws here, and you can adjust by pulling this, loosening and pulling this motor back, tightening the belt, and then tightening your set screws. But the belt feels pretty good. The tracks are good. Now, The only lubrication I do on this thing is this screw shaft here, because it has metal to metal and it's lifting this thing, and it just allows it to operate smoother and also will last longer and not wear out. But you don't want to put any lubrication or anything on these tracks where the rollers are. You want them to roll freely. So that's the basic things that I do here in assembling, and it would be the same thing over here on this ender. I'd make the same adjustments on it, getting it ready to print. It has the 4 rollers on the bed. It has 3 on each side up here and 3 across here. It has the same belt assembly basically. A little different way of adjusting the tension on this one. Of course, I put these homemade rollers on here on all of my printers down here, because the standard one that comes with this is the roller that comes with it, and it can only handle a spool width like that. I have some spools that are larger, so this one will handle much larger spool width. So I go ahead and do that, so that way I can run large spools, small spools, any of them on these printers down here. So until the next time, happy printing from New Tech Inventors.